Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back for this is episode 2 of my impressions on Resident Evil Revelations 2. Um, we're opening up with meet a couple more members of the Terra Save organization that were captured by whoever this is that takes all the entire organization to the island. So we flesh out the cast a little bit more, but in true Resident Evil fashion, don't get too attached to them. Uh, a couple of them are interesting. Some of them are kind of eh. Like most Resident Evil characters, like side characters, seem to fall into certain stereotypes, and that very much happens here. You got your nerdy, very afraid guy. You got your kind of tough, badass ex-military guy. But all in all, I mean, they're fairly likable for the amount of time that they do spend on screen, which isn't much. The gameplay, I felt, was a little bit more actiony than the previous episode. Episode one was had more of a traditional Resident Evil feel. There was a good bit more enemies than you'd probably encounter in Resident Evil or Resident Evil 2, but not quite as many as you would in like 4, 5, and 6. So there was a little bit more of a survival horror type of feeling in the first episode, whereas this one felt more akin to, I'd say, Resident Evil 4. You were in like more tighter spaces. There was a couple more opened up areas. You spend most of this part outside, but they did seem like they threw a lot more at you than what there was in the previous entry. But it wasn't overwhelming, but you still had limited amount of resources, so you really had to make your shots count or come up with creative ways to dispatch the enemies. But all in all, I didn't think it was overbearing. There was a boss fight that was kind of um, it took me a minute to kind of adjust to it because he's fast and he has a one-hit kill. And while the evade system works pretty good, uh, the camera at times kind of feels like it's real close up on your shoulder. So when most of my mistakes were made when I tried to evade this dashing attack that the boss does, and I accidentally dashed into like a crate, or not a, I didn't dash, or I tried to evade his dashing attack and I accidentally like slid into a crate or against the wall of a building and he got me. But it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was unfair. It was just too narrow of an FOV, so I couldn't really plan accordingly. But that seems to be an issue with Resident Evil games, the over-the-shoulder Resident Evil games in general. They feel kind of claustrophobic at times. At least I think they do. When it comes with your camera perspective, it just feels like it's real tight in there sometimes. But Claire's section scenario felt more very, like I said, it felt a lot more action oriented than either part of the previous episode. Even so much so that Barry's was, it felt very toned back. But I'll get to that in a minute. Claire's section gave us a little bit more exposition, and it actually used some minor spoilers coming up. I'm not going to spoil the entire episode for those that haven't played it. Um, not Moira. Natalia actually shows up in Claire's episode for a little bit and kind of travels with you for a few areas. But all in all, it's kind of more of the same. If you played episode 1, then you pretty much know what to expect in episode 2. A little bit more plot in this one than there was in the last episode, which now it's getting interesting. But in true fashion of an episodic game, when it really gets going, then it's like to be continued. So don't expect pun not intended, any revelations as to what's going on, but there is some more, a little bit more plot revealed, and now I'm interested. General, just wording of what you do find out that I thought was pretty cool is the TerraSave people were infected with a modified T virus called the T Phobos virus. And what essentially happened is the virus was modified so it doesn't like instantly mutate you. It doesn't activate until after you are under a great deal of stress, which goes back and explains more about why they had the monitoring bracelets on. And some notes you found in the first episode says that the monitoring bracelets, green is calm, yellow is I think like a little bit of stress, red is blinking red is panicked, and then solid red is the person's beginning to mutate. So that's where that comes from, is the T Phobos virus starting to kick in and mutate the people, which I thought was a neat twist to the whole thing that they've done in previous games with viruses and things like that. They never really did anything that didn't kick in until your heart rate gets elevated and you're panicking essentially. Um, but which all in all I thought was pretty cool. That was all revealed in Claire's scenario. A lot more, a little bit more plot in her scenario than there is in Barry's. Whereas out of the two of them, Barry's had the far more interesting ending and the biggest like holy shit moment, I guess you could say. Much like the first episode, you go through basically the same area, just from a different perspective on it. For all intents and purposes, as far as we know now, Barry's camp scenarios take place 6 months after Claire and Moira's. So Barry's picks up right where it left off, obviously, in episode one at the radio tower, where both scenarios ended in the last episode. And you progress through to both scenarios in this one have the goal of reaching this tower that you see off in the distance. Two different results. You don't really go into the tower with Claire, but you do actually enter the tower with Barry and Natalia, and you learn there's a pretty big reveal that I'm not going to get into here, but I thought it was kind of cool. It'll be interesting to see where the next two episodes go with that, with the reveal, and hopefully this sets up maybe having our next big villain in the series to kind of take place of Umbrella and Wesker and things like that. So we'll see what happens there, which I know that's kind of a spoiler, but it's not a huge spoiler. So hopefully, like I said, we'll see. Maybe this will set up the big bad. Now, like I said, there's a lot more stealth involved in Barry's. No, I mean you can play it straight up, just running in guns blazing, but the resource management kind of makes it a little tough. You may run out of ammo. I found it to be a nice change of pace and a little bit more interesting to try to be quiet and stealthy, especially since like Barry's kind of, I mean, like he's this big tank of a dude with a Magnum, and in this game, like I said at the beginning of the game, Barry starts with the Magnum, his Samurai Edge, and an assault rifle, and you pick up a bolt action rifle along the way. Claire didn't get any. Maybe, well, no. With Claire, you pick up an automatic pistol, or a machine pistol. And with Barry, you get a bolt action rifle. So you do get two new weapons this time around. But Barry, it's kind of weird playing stealth with Barry just because he's huge and loaded to the brim with weapons. But like I said, I thought it was a nice, interesting take on it. It might have made more sense to have Claire and Moira do it, but I don't know. It contrasted nicely to, like I said, what I thought was a lot more action in Claire's scenario. So it was kind of a little bit, felt a little bit more of like a balanced gameplay experience than episode one did. Um, and it's something that I would like to see in Resident Evil 7 or further episodes of this game, because it was pretty refreshing considering where the last three numbered entries in the series have just been these huge action pieces, and even Revelations one and then this one so far to an extent have been, you have your survival horror elements that were in the original game, but you still have, or the original games, but you still have like a little bit more action thrown at you than you did in the first three. So I think something. If the Revelations games to me kind of feel like they're Capcom testing the waters to see what does and doesn't stick with fans before they put out like a proper numbered Resident Evil. So hopefully I'm not the only one that likes this more laid back stealth mechanic that's in this episode, and maybe we'll get to see more of that in a future installment of the series. All in all, it I kind of felt like it was a little bit harder than the last episode, so I don't know if each episode is going to get a little bit tougher in difficulty or not. Um, Especially Claire's felt a little bit more difficult than the previous episode did. But, all in all, I think if you like the first episode, you'll enjoy the second episode and so on and so forth. It's hard to judge the game as a whole right now since we're really, I mean, this would be the equivalent of trying to do like a review of a game when you're only halfway through it, because we are, we still got two more episodes. But um, all in all, I'm interested to see where this game is going to go with future episodes, and they have a fairly solid foundation so far. I mean, there's a couple hiccups here and there, but nothing that is detrimental to the overall experience so far. So unless they really drop the ball with the third and fourth episodes, then I think we're on a good track to see what's going to happen. Um, Overall, one of the things that really stood out in this episode to me was Barry's character. He's shown to have a little bit more depth than what we're accustomed to. Obviously, he's protective of Natalia because she is a child. He still makes some really corny jokes, which is a nice nod to Resident Evil 1. And he, they still don't really establish what happened between him and Moira yet. Hopefully, we do figure that out or find out what happened there. I'd imagine it's probably going to be like dialogue between him and Natalia that reveals everything. Also, Natalia is revealed to be a pretty central figure in this experiment or whatever is happening on this island. Um, but nothing really jumps out at you yet as to what's going on. But we'll just continue going along. Next week, the next episode comes out. Hopefully, I get to play it a little bit sooner. I started playing it Tuesday or I started playing episode 2 Tuesday when it came out, but I had some, I had a schedule change. I had a brain fart too there apparently for a second. I had a schedule change, so I had to work 2 extra days before my days off and things like that. So I didn't get around to finishing it right away. So that's why this video is a little late. But all in all, like I said, pretty solid so far. It has its ups and downs, but so far nothing, as I said, detrimental to the experience. And hopefully they don't blow it in the next two episodes in the game. Not real keen on this whole episodic thing. I don't feel like it works real well with a game like this, because really it just kind of irritates me that I have to, especially with the ending, the episode 2. Now I'm just irritated that I have to wait a few days to find out what's going to happen. Um, so really hope this isn't like a business model that Capcom continues to pursue, but you never know. They've done dumber shit in the past, so we'll see. But I guess overall, like I said, I mean, if you're watching this, you've probably played episode 1, or you're waiting until all 4 episodes are out. If you liked, again, as I stated in the last video, if you liked the first Revelations, you'll like this game. If you liked kind of the older Resident Evils and you're okay with the newer ones, but that big action set pieces that are in the newer ones aren't really your bag, then you might enjoy this one. But if you're not a fan of the Resident Evil series, this isn't going to change your mind at all. So we'll see. Oh, I almost completely forgot. One thing I thought was pretty cool that they introduced in this episode is in Barry's campaign. Um, just to recap something from the previous episode, Natalia, she doesn't really have a whole lot at her disposal because she's a child. But one of the things that she can do is she can like detect these auras for enemies. And I'm recapping this in case you didn't watch the last video I made. Um, and she can point out where enemies are at, which at first I was kind of like, well, that's kind of handy because you can see if there's like an enemy in a room before you open the door or whatever. But they really kick it in the high gear in this episode because there's some invisible, weird, bloated bug type enemies, and she can see their auras. She can't really kill them, so you have to switch back to Barry, and you kind of have to memorize where the aura is when you're using Natalia, and then when you switch to Barry, then you can pot shot them and hopefully take them out and eliminate them. I thought that was pretty cool, neat little twist. Uh, we'll see if they keep those around in the next episode. Uh, they were a totally new enemy in this one, and we'll see where they go from here. Wasn't really any new enemies off the top of my head in Claire's campaign other than like these weird kind of hairless dog looking things. Uh, they were kind of a nuisance a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. But they weren't. I mean, Resident Evil dogs are Resident Evil dogs. So the invisible bug enemies I thought were far more interesting of an addition to the enemy list than the dogs were. No real new bosses in Barry's campaign. You fight the same boss that Claire fought, and then you kind of move on from there. So, like I said, we'll see where they continue to go with this, and I really hope they don't just please Capcom, don't fuck it up. You're off to a fairly strong start, so just don't fuck it up. So, um, I guess that's about it right now for episode 2, and then we'll see what happens in episode 3. Then once it's all done, then I'll kind of give my opinion on the overall experience, and this by then I'll feel a little bit more comfortable about getting into the whole story overall. Because by then, if you haven't played it, then you're probably not going to, and if you have played it, you've probably experienced the whole story by then. So we'll cover that in a couple more weeks. But like always, guys, I want to thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. All right, have a good one.